INDYCAR Series entry for Juncos Hollinger Racing, replacing Agustin Canapino for the weekend. Agustin had been on site. He had taken part in the driver autograph session earlier in the day, but according to the team statement, Juncos Hollinger elected in consultation with Agustin to stand him down for the weekend. This is all stemming from the issues that started at Detroit, where a number of Agustin's race fans had taken offense to some things that happened on track, targeted their aggression at Théo Pourchaire. There's been a lot of things that have gone down since then, of course. Ultimately, the decision was made for Agustin to stand down for the weekend. Nolan Siegel jumped aboard the number 78. Now, where we thought this was going to go was that then Nolan would be participating both in Indy Next by Firestone and the NTT IndyCar Series, and what I'm told is that was the plan until about 7:30 this morning, when the HMD team that Nolan Siegel drives for in Indy Next by Firestone was informed that, in fact, Nolan was going to focus on the NTT IndyCar Series program instead. Mike Marini, the general manager there at HMD, was fully in support of that. They've told us they plan to reassess his Indy Next by Firestone program at the beginning of next week. But what makes that interesting is that Nolan is scheduled to leave immediately after the IndyCar race on Sunday, hop on a plane and go to France, because he's set to make his debut in the 24 Hours of Le Mans next week. So there are all kinds of different programs affected by all of this. One other thing to note is that at Indy Next by Firestone, his seat was taken this morning by Kiko Porto, who ran a partial schedule last year. He hopped aboard here earlier today, and that's just the next part of this carousel that we've seen throughout the course of the weekend here at Road America. And for more on that story, let's check in now with Michael Young.
With team owner Ricardo Juncos. This has been an interesting weekend thus far, and to get a session started, we have rain, so now we sit and wait. Is this even an atmosphere, or I should say a condition that you would send Nolan out in?
Well, it's a tricky one, right? He's a rookie, basically. He has some IndyCar experience, which is great. Super talented kid so far. Even yesterday, he was doing an excellent job, to be honest. Last minute, everybody knows what happened. So I think this is not exactly what we needed. We don't know if this afternoon is going to be the rain or not. That's the question mark, because if it does rain today afternoon, then we need to do some laps. He never drove this in the rain. So I think we may go out to test it a little bit and see if we can feel the engine power and the things on the rain. We're careful if we can, but it's a tricky one, and I don't think the rain's going to stop now. And, you know, the weather seems okay for the afternoon, but you never know.
Obviously working with Agustin all these years, and now you have a new driver in the car. Is there anything you can translate from Agustin to Nolan? How does he speak to you as a driver?
This is more than remind me my days in Indy Lights, right? When you have a rookie driver, not much experience, so we need to remind the basics and cold tires, lower pressure, understanding all the technical side of this car, which is quite different. So I'm more on that coaching side now compared to Agustin, which is a driver with a lot of experience and a lot of high level of technical understanding of the car. So now it's kind of go, making sure he understands everything, he interprets the reasons why, very important. So that's what I'm doing with him, and it's been so far really good.
Ricardo, obviously this is a very fluid situation. The question is, everybody seems to be going to Milwaukee to test. Do you plan on taking this team to test in Milwaukee after the race here?
We modified the date, so we're going to be in July 1st with Chip Ganassi, so we have more time to do that test like everybody else going to be next week. But yes, so we at this moment, I focus today and this weekend only, right?
We'll let you get back to it. Thank you for your time as always.
All right, thank you so much.
That's Ricardo Juncos.
Yeah, lots of information there, tremendous insight from Ricardo as to what the mindset is of that race team, Davey, and how frustrating to be dealing with this in the middle of a race season.
Yeah, it is tough. Obviously, that team, we continue to say how the improvements came, how they had an alliance with McLaren that's no longer there. Still don't know if Canapino is coming back. We don't know if this is just for the weekend. It sounds like, if I heard that right, they're going to go do the Milwaukee test later, not do it this week, and to prepare more time. So we'll see what happens. But as we're looking right now live, that as to say, we're hope it all works out for those guys. But it's pouring rain right now. We're on board with McLaughlin. It just tells you how much rain's out there. Not sure. One thing with rain, I have to say this, is sometimes when it rains, you take advantage of it just to kind of get the driver used to the rain. I don't think it's going to help him for this weekend, but it could help him for the future if we're testing in the future. So that could be a little bit what's going on. But they're definitely creeping around here because it is definitely full on wet.
Well, it's the first time we've had an opportunity to see another safety feature that's been added to these cars, Davey. If you look at the rear wing of these cars and you look on the end plates on each, you see that they've added lights there in addition to the rear attenuator, and that really, with those rooster tails coming off that car, that makes a huge difference for the cars behind in terms of visibility.
Yeah, and one thing just interested in, too, with the aero screen, they haven't had a lot of rain situations with the aero screen, just another opportunity to see how the driver's vision is, how that water rolls off that screen, if it gets in between the tear-offs and that the screen itself, just the moisture coming in the vents they have. So you do learn a lot from it, obviously. I wouldn't be changing a lot. For example, I'm just going to show Colton Herter right now. Out there in that rain, slide going off course, just way overdrove it. And then no sense risking. He was fastest on the dry. I wouldn't be changing my car around.
And one of the things that we noticed, too, is we see McLaughlin with it off. One of the things we noticed, too, is, they added those air inlets at the top of those aero screens. And before the drivers went out, they were putting the tape across those.
Yeah, that's right.
To keep that water from seeping in and splashing it on the driver. So, and I think every team, including McLaughlin, was one we saw, and we see him with it off into the gravel trap. Looks like he was able to keep the car going, get back in the grass, and get it back underway. Speaking of pit road and what's going on there, let's get an update to that end from Michael Young.
There's actually pieces, to your point, Mark, that go into that air inlet that they are able to close off. I was just getting ready to talk to Brian Barnhart, and he said they're actually getting ready to send Alexander Rossi out. They've got the front damper cowling off of that car right now, getting set to send him out momentarily. But some takers down here on pit lane, and again, it's not a downpour, but it is raining hard enough that you can see the actual raindrops on not only pit lane but out on the track as well. So as this steady rain continues, I think you're going to see more and more takers, because it does look like the weather is starting to build to the west of us, and the rain may be with us a little bit longer than we initially anticipated.
Yeah, and another thing, Mark, when rain happens and you have all the rubber on this racetrack, when rain gets on top of that rubber, it makes it extremely slick. So what you need to do is you run offline. You run not in the rubber area. So in the corners, you're out in the outside part where nobody usually runs. So we watch all these drivers go off, including Colton. They were in the groove where they're supposed to be. This time you see Colton go down there. He's still pretty high up in that groove, but takes it much easier. But you can just see how much sliding around it's doing. But you got to have a completely different line around the course when there's the rain on the track.
Brake bias has got to be different. Everything has
so
to be
much,
different.
and that there's only 9 cars really taking advantage of this, and I just don't know. We've seen 2 cars go off already. Ferrucci almost went off. Don't know it's worth the gamble as we see McLaughlin completely sideways coming off of turn 14. He saves it, continues on, but boy, if qualifying's next, you don't want to damage your race car.
Well, but as Michael said, this thing continues to build to the west, and it's a roll of the dice here for these teams and these drivers, and they may very well have to qualify under these conditions.
Yeah, you might have to. I mean, it could be a situation where there's a risk, and like I say, they have meteorologists looking all over the place, and they have people that are calling west of us to see how long they think it's going to take, and because the qualifying's not until this afternoon, and it shows it's going to be clear, but that doesn't mean it's going to.
I mentioned, we talked about the brake bias. You said before we went on that you look at some of these drivers that hadn't, right a couple of minutes before the green flag, hadn't even gotten their cars. I believe Jack Harvey was one we saw still in the pit box, but you said there's a lot of changes. So what changes specifically have to be made, or do they make to these cars to get them ready to run in the west?
Yeah, the first thing they do is the spring package. They soften the springs and make the car really pliable, where it moves around more, transfers weight around. We see McLaughlin off track one more time, puts it in reverse, going to spin around.
He's taking a long way around.
He's taking a long way around, yeah. And just to try to get more grip, the softer, the more grip there is. You're not going fast. We see Lundgaard going off. He's backing out of a gravel trap. But yeah, there's a lot. As a matter of fact, cambers and casters could change with these rain tires. Obviously, the spring package, the shock package are completely different. As we see Lundgaard go straight off, and man, he got way off there. He backed it up. I'm surprised he gets stuck in that gravel trap, but he did get it out of there.
So we did have a dry session yesterday for the first practice session, and Alex Below was the fastest toward the end of the session at 1:43.1709. Then Colton Herta at a 1:43.2506. Santino Ferrucci third fastest at 1:43.3618. And Davey, to tell you how tight things are, the top 15 were all in the 143. You said it went from Pillow at 1:43.1709. Rossi was 15th fastest at 1:43.997.
Yeah, no, how impressive is that on a 4-mile course and still being so close on the timing chart? And it's going to get closer yet. This rain's not helping them find out what they need to do. There's 34 minutes left in this practice session. As we see Pillow go off, they're going to throw a red flag. By the way, P1 yesterday in the dry. Now he's off at the gravel pit. The red flag's going to come out and going to have to tow him out. And same thing, they're going to get that car. There's no damage to it, but just getting all that gravel out of it, just know that the car was really good. You don't really want to change it for these race conditions because, like I said, it seems like it's going to be dry this afternoon.
Michael Young.
Well, with Brian Barnhart, who calls the shots for Alexander Rossi. Are we having fun yet?
Well, it's different, that's for sure.
A little bit about, and I hadn't seen it before, on the front shock cover, the damper cover, there's an element that you added. I haven't seen any other teams run it up and down. Obviously, that is an option for you to run. What does that element do?
We're just trying to keep moisture out of the cockpit, keep all the electronics, the steering wheel, the dash, everything dry if we can. So just trying to block any water from getting in there.
You've made a lot of strategy calls in your career, lots of strategy calls. What do you have to learn in this session? Is this a long play for a potential this afternoon?
Absolutely. I think if there was no chance of rain this afternoon, we probably wouldn't run. But with what we're looking at, we need to get some information and data and be ready to do it again this afternoon in qualifying.
Does your driver like running in the rain?
Yeah, he's pretty good at it. So we'll see how it goes.
We'll let you get back to it. Red flag conditions. That's Brian Barnhart. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good stuff. Brian Barnhart, and 12 of the 27 have taken to the racetrack, Davey. And again, interesting thoughts from Brian Barnhart in terms of they feel like that they're better than average chance that there might be some weather this afternoon. But It looks like there's about, maybe 10 other teams that feel like, maybe we'll take a wait and see.
Yeah, and right now I'm looking at 2:25 for INDYCAR to qualify. Central time and 3:25 Eastern time, and it could, you just don't know. I'm trying to bring up weather right now, but again, my phone's not agreeing with me. My weather app just not that good. I guess I need to get a different app, as I said yesterday. But we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, yes, I get it. If it's for sure going to rain this afternoon, you need to go out and qualify the best you can. But man, you don't want to mess up your dry car if the dry condition car if it's not going to rain.
Yeah, interesting, the thing that people may not think about with Brian Barnhart's conversation, and we saw them, blocking off the inlets in various ways, as Michael Young described, and we did too. I think it's huge to be able to keep as much moisture as you can out of the cockpit of that race car. And again, it's not just for driver comfort, but it's to protect those electronics. Let's get more on the thoughts and impressions on this day from Kyle Moyer. Ryan Marine's caught up with him.
Yeah, we'll start with that question there, Mark. We've noticed, Kyle, that several cars are running, I don't know what you would call them, an element, I guess, on the front of the car that would block moisture from getting into the cockpit, I believe, through the cooling ducts. You have elected not to do that with Scott McLaughlin. What is the thought process, and have you tested those elements out before?
Yeah, not really. It's they call them turning vanes. It just deflects the water off the windscreen. We were trying to see what it does without them. We're probably going to keep that way, and then our teammates are going to try them and sort of see. It's just a thing to see how much it actually helps and stuff.
Interesting. All right, well, we've seen Scott certainly exploring the amount of grip that's available to him here in the wet. How do you balance the desire to learn about this car in wet conditions against the potential risk?
Yeah, good question. We've sort of told him, it's good to explore. Just make sure you're exploring places that keep it on the track and stuff, So grass, gravel traps ain't what we want right now. So, he'll be fine and everything. He's experimenting, just having a good time.
How much of a wet setup do you have on this car, or is it a hybrid compromise?
Yeah, mainly it's the same car. It's just a little bit of downforce on it and a little bit more on the front because of as you can see, a lot of cars are still on this asphalt locking front brakes. So it's kind of slippery out there, but really no. I mean, looks like it's going to be dry for qualifying, so we're going to leave it as is.
Appreciate the time, Kyle Moyer. He says it's going to be dry for qualifying, and when Kyle Moyer speaks, we listen.
Well, most people do.
Yeah.
Some don't.
It just depends on what day it is, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, for sure. He'll tell you that. Sometimes they say they're listening, and then,
Now, they'll listen to him if it has anything to do with a race car and strategy, but with weather, I'm not sure they're going to listen to him, right? Right. Yeah. But very knowledgeable, obviously, a guy that you would want on your pit stand. Like he said, he's not changing the setup, put a little more downforce on it, very easy, not changing springs, shocks, dampers, not changing any cambers or caster, just go out and just try to feel the car, see what it's going to do, which they will have an advantage if it does get wet, but you don't want to harm it. He said no gravel pits, no grass.
It's okay to go exploring, just no gravel traps and runoff areas.
And you're right, these cars, they're made to run in the rain, but if you keep all the moisture out of that cockpit and the shock and damper area, the better off you are, just because there is that chance, right? Electronics don't like moisture.
Right.
They're made for it, and they're sealed, but the more you keep off, the better. And another thing is just make sure the inside of that cockpit doesn't get really too moistened up. And you see Ferrucci right now wiping inside the car down, wiping the aero screen. You don't want that to fog up either.
Well, let's throw this caveat into it. How about we start qualifying with still a wet racetrack, and then it
dries out.
Dry. We'll talk about that in just a minute. We want to hear from Larry Foyt.
Yeah, Larry Foyt on the timing stand, and Didier's working on the front end of the car. Is this an electronic issue? Obviously, rain not your friend or your ally when we have situations with electronics and stuff. What's going on?
Oh, yeah, it's not electronics. We're actually just working on the brake bias a little bit. Obviously in the rain, you go rearward with the brake bias, and he got to a certain point where it locked up, so we're just making sure the cable's free so he can get a little more.
How do you coach, if you do coach a Santino Ferrucci, to not push it too hard? Obviously, these conditions aren't great, but I don't know if that driver has a filter on what the limits are. Do you dial it back a little bit with him?
No, he's pretty smart in these situations. Obviously, he knows we have a good car in the dry. Looking at the radar, we think this will move out, but I think everybody's having to do this exercise just in case something pops up and we do qualify or race in the rain. But yeah, we're really happy with a dry car, so just trying to be smart but get some experience in the wet.
Big picture, is this data that you save for down the road, running out here in conditions like this, even though this course is different than anything else we would run on?
Well, yeah, and we all have some of us have been carrying around rain tires for a while, and some of them are newer, and it's just, we had a little bit of experience in Detroit last week in the race, so this is just a good chance to get on this type of course and get some knowledge.
All right, we'll let you get back to it. Thank you for the time.
Thanks.
That's Larry Foyt.
Well, as positive as things are moving in an upward trajectory for Santino Ferrucci, there's little doubt that the focus at some point is going to turn to the 41 car, Davey. Top 22, and we don't want to belabor this leader circle, but the harsh reality is it's badly needed funding for these race teams. The Stingray Rob is currently 24th.
Yeah, no, that team has one car in, one car out, and they need to do all they can. As you see, Stingray Rob has made some laps along with Ferrucci, his teammate, out there, but you just got to be careful. I mean, they're way off the pace, obviously. I mean, Colton Herta's a 2:09, Rob's a 2:18, so 9 seconds difference. So he just out there just trying to get the feel. But another thing that I like looking, we're watching Colton Herta right now go through the carousel, just kind of hanging on through there. But with water, it kind of simulates wind tunnel, what we see in a wind tunnel, and how the air goes over these cars. And with the moisture, you can kind of see how the water goes over the wings, over the side pods where it is. Yeah, it's coming off the tires. So it's kind of a little wind tunnel experience for us, or a little bit of knowledge of seeing how these cars slide through the air.
That does a great. The tread design really does a great job of channeling that water and getting it away from the race car.
It is amazing. We do two-seater rides in the rain as well. It's not always that much fun for all of us because you're getting soaking wet, but it's amazing. The same thing, the grip and the speed that you could actually run with rain tires. Promise you, going down these straightaways, once you get some downforce, you're going as fast down the straightaways on these rains as you are on the dries. It's just you got to brake way early, and as Larry Foyt says, you want to get the rear bias more so the front end doesn't lock up. It really wants to lock up easy in the rain.
Under 30 minutes to go in this session. Herta, Lundgaard, Rahal, Pourchaire, Palou, the top five. Michael Young.
And we heard Larry Foyt talk about, or I should say Kyle Moyer talk about the fact that you don't want him to get in the grass, get into the gravel. Well, that's exactly what Alex Palou has done. Now imagine being in a sand trap if you're a golfer effort and trying maybe 3-4 times to get the ball out of the sand trap, and all the sand that escapes the sand trap out into the grass. That's kind of what the gravel looks like here on pit lane for Alex Palou. Just scattered gravel everywhere as the team has air blowers through the entire car trying to blow all of that gravel out of that car and get Alex back out onto the track. Let's head down to Ryan Marine.
One car I don't think we'll be seeing on track anytime soon is the number 60 Honda for Felix Rosenqvist of Meyershank Racing. He's not only in the pit lane with an umbrella held over his head, but that car is actually covered by the plastic cover. It's kind of like when you put your grill cover over your grill when you know rain is coming in. That's what his Honda INDYCAR looks like right now. Felix, though, still sits inside the cockpit. There's one mechanic holding the umbrella for him. Another has been working on the steering wheel and just gave it back to Felix, which he's just put back on the car. Another mechanic has just arrived and is going to wipe off that windscreen and maybe use some kind of material that will help get the moisture from sticking to it. But it looks like this is a car that's going to be stationary for quite some time with that plastic covering draped all over Felix Rosenqvist's machine.
Pretty slick job at the wheel by Kyle Kirkwood in that runoff area down at turn number 5.
Yeah, you know, one thing that I got to be careful of, some of them going to these runoff areas, as Kirkwood did, spun that car right around, started to come back on track, but the car behind him seemed like it may be coming off in that runoff area too. They avoided each other, no problem, but he continued on. As Colton Hurd is still out there, he's still trying to get the most out of that car, basically 3 seconds faster than second quick at this point. So his car's been good on wet, it's been good on dry. Colton's not, he's definitely getting some, you know, as a driver, I'll have to say, if you're going to do a lot of rain racing, which we don't in America, we don't get that much rain at these races, but it would be a good opportunity, especially on this track with these speeds, to learn how good you are in the rain.
23 of the 27 cars have turned laps, Michael Young.
The rain's coming down harder than it has this entire session thus far. The rooster tails coming off these cars. Pretty awesome as they make their way down this long front straightaway as we stand in pit lane and can see them go by, as we see Nolan Siegel make his way out and actually turn some laps with that Juncos Hollinger car. But as I said, this rain is starting to come down and we have a car off here. Pietro Fittipaldi, red flag is out here at Road America.
Yeah, and Davey, he had pretty much an eventful lap, but it finally ended for him.
Yeah, he was actually, you know, trying to get the most out of that car. He sits P10 right now, but going down in Canada Corner, not even close. He drove in way, way, way too far in these wet conditions, and he slid all the way through the gravel pit trap, almost all the way to the tire barrier. Luckily, he didn't hit, but once he got it buried in there, he came to a stop. You can see the steam coming off the tires. The rain's falling hard right now. You know, just big risk right now out there.
Yeah, the heaviest stuff is essentially over the racetrack as we speak.
Yeah,
and
right
if
now.
we look at the radar, we see the far western edge of this radar screen. We start to see some braking. Well, but back to what we were talking about a couple of minutes ago before we went to pit road. Interesting scenario would unfold if the track was still very wet when qualifying started and then it began to dry, given the fact that there's so many rounds in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then that's another thing that they're all thinking about, and how long is it going to take to dry and so many things. You know, I think to really be able to tell how wet it is, if Nick Yeoman, he's not doing anything, he can go stand outside and see how long it takes to be completely wet.
Great point.
Yeah, see how long it takes, but it won't take that long either right now. It's coming down pretty hard.
Maybe go out to turn 5. We need somebody out on the course, a little far away from where we are.
And I see there's a few towers, cell towers that you crawl on top of too.
Yeah, that's
a safe
right.
place to be.
Yeah, we've got some lifts around the course, and maybe down there where they used to do the zip line. He can climb to the top of that where the zip line is and give us a condition report. Well, I'll tell you what, it's a good thing that gravel trap is where it is, because we saw a couple of looks at the replay, and he was carrying some momentum into Canada.
He had a lot of speed. If that was asphalt and not a gravel trap, he definitely would have hit the wall. So he needs to be thankful for that. Winds out, rain's hammering down. These teams are on pit lane right now. It's never fun. I know that I wouldn't be going out in this as a team owner anyways.
Well, but I think, too, and you talked about this before we went on, the issue for these teams now, I think earlier in the session when the rain was lighter, I think that gives him a good realistic look. But the reality of it is, even though this is not a street course and there's plenty of areas for the water to run off, there are still plenty of places where that water will stand and run from one side to the other.
That's right, stream. Yeah.
And it's just not safe to run in that.
It just isn't. Just not worth the gamble at this point. And I agree with them. If they may have an advantage and learn something from this, which is always good. But right now, we're going into a race weekend. It's going to be dry tomorrow. You got your cars. You know where you were yesterday. Now, here's the bummer part. We know Plo was fast. Colton was fast. We've seen who was at top of the truck. BK was good. Ray Hall actually was really good yesterday. Erickson. But some of the teams towards the bottom, Frucci was actually another one that obviously was really good. But the ones at the bottom struggling for speed, like Castro Neves was struggling for speed. So Harvey was down there. Some of these drivers. Who else was? Actually, Erickson, Simpson, Elio, Lundqvist, Rasmussen, Rob, all struggling for speed. This is a bummer for them because they can't go out. They don't know if the changes they made to the car helped or hurt in these dry conditions.
And again, the top 15 were pretty close proximity, Michael Young. Alex Palou was the fastest yesterday, 1:43.1709. Rossi was 15th fastest at 1:43.997. It was from 16 on down where you got into the 1:44s.
That's amazing how close those top 15 are, and then the fall off after that happened. Standing in Colton Herta's pit, he just came and brought that Gamebridge Honda to pit lane, and it's amazing. And Davey touched upon it. These wet weather tires are made to be driven in the wet, and they get extremely hot. The tread pattern is completely different. It dissipates the water. But we talk about when tracks start to dry out that they will fall apart quickly because they get so terribly hot, to the point where I thought it was amazing to look at Colton Herta's front tires. They're actually steaming. You can see the heat that was built up on those tires, and as the rain falls, the car comes to a rest. As they cool off, you can see how much heat has built in those tires. So imagine running in this rain and then having it dry out, what that would do to a wet weather tire.
Yeah, and as we recall, having been in that situation where they've had the wet weather tires on and the track starts to dry, Davey, you can actually see them intentionally look for wet spots on the racetrack to run those tires to keep them cool.
Just to try to keep them cool, exactly right. And they wear out quick. We find that out. I mean, it doesn't take very long at all, and that is key. And just like right now, Michael, isn't it amazing? It's raining, it's cool out, it's pouring rain, but those tires still generate a lot of heat in them just with the downforce of these cars, the speed, and they still have heat in them.
25 of the 27 cars have turned laps in this session. Colton Herta sets atop the charts, then Will Power, then Lundgaard, then Erickson and Rahal. Pourchaire 6th, VK 7th, Stingray Robb is 8th, Rossi is 9th, Fittipaldi is 10th. 11th is Grosjean, 12th is Simpson, Palou is 13th, 14th is McLaughlin, 15th Armstrong, 16th Award, and Lundqvist 17th, Luca Giotto is 18th, 19th Rasmussen, 20th Ferrucci, 21st Kirkwood, 22nd Newgarden, 23rd Castro Neves, 24th is Scott Dixon, and Jack Harvey is 25th. And I guess the most laps turned, interestingly enough, the driver who's got the quickest lap, if you will, is Colton Herta. He's turned 7 laps. Most everybody in that 5 or 6 lap range. A couple of drivers have turned just 2 laps. And to give you an idea of the disparity, Davey, from yesterday to today, Colton Herta right now is at 2:07.303 and turned a lap yesterday at 1:43.2506.
Big difference. I'll tell you know who this really hurts is news of the weekend, that Uncos Allender team. There's a lot of news coming out of that team right now. What happens yesterday before he even makes his first lap, Grosjean goes into the fence, doesn't get to run anything yesterday. They put Nolan Siegel in the car and as a rookie and really got very few laps. So that, with these wet conditions, they do not have a clue what they have in the dry. It really puts them behind the 8 ball and having this wet session before qualifying, because this is the last really opportunity they have.
27 minutes remaining in this session, Ryan Marine.
Graham Rahal's out of his car. The car is currently covered. You got the hat on, helmet in the bag behind you. Does that tell us all we need to know?
Well, I think, we went out early and, and I think the car was pretty good in the rain, actually, and we were really pretty competitive there in the first outing. And so, the rain's picking up now, but I think this is going to blow through. I mean, we feel that qualifying is dry, and so the risk-reward right now is a little on edge, right? I mean, qualifying groups are set after this, but, we also want to make sure we've got a car to qualify with, and so I think that's the risk you take right now. So for us, look, if it rains, I think we'll be very competitive. But if it's dry, you can see to the west it's getting lighter, right? So if it's dry as we predict, then we shouldn't. This is not relative anyway.
Were you running a full rain setup, or was it a hybrid?
Yeah, I mean, hybrid-ish, but you try to run it as close as you can, for sure.
We go back to green. We'll let you hop up on the timing stand. Graham Ringhold, though, done for this practice session as the rain continues to come down.
And there's water standing pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, no, it's heavy rain right now. And there's even on pit lane, you can see the stream of water going down across the pit lane as they come out. And I think about 5 or 6 cars are taking advantage of this track time right now, but I'm on Graham's side. I just risk to reward, I think, is a little hard right now.
Michael Young?
As you look out towards the west, you do see the skies starting to lighten up ever so slightly to the point where I thought, hey, is the sun trying to peek its way through? That would be odd, but certainly not unheard of at Road America. But as you look towards the northeast, there's a lot of darker skies. But as Graham had said, this weather is starting to move through and the skies beginning to lighten, although the rain still persistent and heavy here on pit lane.
I think that plan is one as Colton Herta spins off in turn number 5 for I think the 14th or 15th time in this session. But I think and Graham taking a very sensible approach, Davey. Let's put the wet weather tires on. Let's go out, do as much as we can possibly do, and then know that no matter what, we're covered whether it's wet or dry during qualifying.
They got a few laps in to just see what he has. He says, I feel I'm pretty competitive with what we have. And he goes, hey, I want a car for qualifying. I don't want to go out and make a mistake, and it's easy to do. And like I say, a handful of cars out. Colton Herta was the first one to go down turn 5, first one to slide right off. And as you can see right now, it is absolutely pouring down right there. The cars have no speed whatsoever, just trying to get around the course. Without sliding off is the challenge right now.
Yeah, and again, there's no issues with cars running nose to tail or anything like that. They're giving each other plenty of room to roam, that's for sure.
Yeah, you're watching Newgarden right now going through the kink on that back straightaway. The car moved around a little bit. And like I say, it looks like he's going about 30 miles an hour. He's barely moving. So I expect him just to pull right back in the pits, but we'll wait and see.
Yeah, we're looking at speeds. Now, normally when we're on the road and the street courses, we talk more about time than we do speeds. We focus on speeds when we're more on ovals. And right now you're looking at about 97 miles per hour, I believe. We're looking at in terms of speed.
Not too good. A rental car will give him a challenge around here right now with some good rain tires on that. So, yeah, just like I say, risk right now to reward's not good as we showed a little replay of Colton going off course right now. I haven't heard any cars go by. Don't know if Colton's still out there coming on pit lane. I saw that coming off 14. It sounds like I maybe hear one coming by, but I think majority we're going to go in pit lane.
That we see Kiffin Simpson. He's out. We see the 21 of Rinus VK. We see Marcus Armstrong out turning laps. Alex Palou, Rasmussen.
Just say they're turning lap.
Yeah,
they all went out and right back in.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's and I think, I guess it made sense to go out and test after the red flag condition ended, but I think the rain is as such has created a scenario on track where there's just, I don't know, there's much benefit, but somebody just went by
that
at speed.
Looked like Newgarden, I think. No, that's the Rasmussen that went by, yeah. So he went by at a fairly good, you look how hard it's raining and how fast he went by here. He's still moving along pretty good.
Yeah, hitting the straightaway, but boy, I'll tell you what, he is absolutely tiptoeing through
Newgarden out of his car right now.
He did that in 1, and he's doing it again in turn number 3. Back to Michael Young.
Yeah, we're looking at pit lane, and guys, it's starting to become, well, a slight creek, if not a small stream, making its way as the crest of the hill and they make their way down into turn number 1. You can actually see a steady stream of water starting to make its way down into the turn number 1 area that it started to not only puddle but to actually stream as well. So this rain's starting to pool up, and although the skies have cleared, the rain again remains to stay steady here at Road America.
Yeah, that is oftentimes the issue. People say, well, you have rain tires, why don't you use them? Well, if you've got that ponding and you've got places where that water is running across the racetrack, I mean,
they hydroplanes just like anything else. I mean, that's a situation where that car hydroplanes, you're just hanging on. Right? I think, is that BK going down in turn one? I see Rasmussen still out there. Looks like the two Ed Carpenter cars are the ones on track, and they're gone out when it's the worst, obviously worst case conditions. And we can see right now, just going onto that carousel, just how much water that car's shooting off. So much you can't even see who it is unless you have a front shot of it.
Yeah, because if you look at the side, what's really interesting is the way that the body is designed on this Dallara chassis and the way the wings are configured and everything. It's really fascinating to watch it, Davey. And we're getting a slow-mo look at it right now. And he went through a ton of water and kicked it up on both sides of the race car. Fortunately, he was coming off a turn and wasn't at anywhere close to full salt, because that thing would have hydroplaned.
Well, and that's where Michael said it's turning from puddles to streams, and that's where we've seen him go through. It looked like a stream that he crossed over. Right now he's in Canada corner right now, makes it to turn 12, little wiggle up to turn 13, real wiggle sideways to 13, getting ready to get into 14. We'll see if he can.
Look at the amount of water shooting off of that race car.
Yeah, not learning anything right there. I just think that he needs to come in and just say, okay, I made a lap, let's call it good, and don't put that car at any more risk.
Currently 23rd on the timing chart of the 25 cars that have turned laps, and to Davey's point, and on cue, he comes off of that final turn and probably will breathe a huge sigh of relief when he's able to park that thing in his pit box.
Yeah, I got a car in one piece. I'm on pit lane. I'm almost stopped. Let's be happy about that.
And I think Graham made that point, too. I believe, kind of paraphrasing him. Bottom line is, in order to qualify, you got to have a car to qualify.
Yeah, just don't take that risk. Matter of fact, that last time by, we'll look at what Rasmussen turned. 2 minutes 28 seconds was that was his best time. His last time by, which was his best time. 2 minutes and 28 seconds was his last time by, compared to Colton Herta at 2:07. So 20 seconds off the pace. So at this point, it's so wet, you're just not learning anything.
Colton Herta continues P1. Two takers for now, Davey, Reedus VK and Stingray Robb are the two cars.
Two cars out there right now. We'll see the same thing if they just go around and pull right back in, or what. Right now, with Stingray Robb, he actually has a pretty good lap in earlier at a 2:14. The last time was a 2:17. Looks like he is also going to pull in as well.
Yeah, Colton Herta is now out of the race car, and he, I think, has picked up pretty much all the intel that he feels like that he can pick up.
He said, I'm P1, that's what I'm supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
It can be done now. But obviously he's a good rain racer, because he got most out of the car, went off a few times, but he has the top speed right now. But they're probably the same thing. What more can you learn?
Okay, let's hear from Corey Williams of Firestone, his thoughts and impressions on this day. Probably has plenty to say, Ryan.
I would imagine so. He's a principal engineer for Firestone. We've seen the Firestone wet Firehawks out on track today. First of all, what goes into preparing these tires, making sure that the teams have them and have the data that they need to go out there with some sense of what to expect?
Well, they always have at least 2 carry sets they have with them just in case conditions, and we then bring all 3 sets as well for each race event weekend typically that they can mount up if they need to go through their first 2 carry sets.
For the layman at home, we know obviously the basics are slicks don't have grooves, the rain tires do, but there's a whole lot more that goes into designing a good racing rain tire.
Yep, because of the setup of the vehicle and the uniqueness with the front tire being a different size than the rear too, so we use what we call an asymmetric directional pattern. So because of the setup of the car, you have a different kind of pattern that's developed to evacuate the water out of the footprint from the inboard side of the tire to the outboard side of the tire, and that's front to rear. So
how do the construction and compound of rain tires differ than your average racing slick?
So the construction is very similar to the typical road course, street course construction, because we don't want to drastically change too much construction-wise once they have their cars set up. But then obviously the pattern's different, unique to evacuate the water, and then also the compound's a little bit unique too, because it's typically when it rains a little cooler conditions as well. Track surface temperatures are down.
I don't know that necessarily the teams and the drivers are loving this, but from a Firestone perspective, this has to be great, right? This is giving you the data that you only get if it's raining, and you can't count on that.
It's very true. Yep, Mother Nature comes into play and helps us out every once in a while. So for us as engineers and kind of the design aspect, we love to collect all the data and analyze it.
Thanks for the time.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Michael?
with Alex Palou, and he was actually standing down here with me, and there is a river running right beside the pit box, and those race shoes don't actually tread water very well. You don't want to get those wet because those are very expensive shoes. What was it like out there?
It was wild. I mean, there was a ton of water standing, especially this last couple of minutes. The cars were aquaplaning on the straight, so that's not good. But honestly, at the beginning was good. Like the grip was quite high. It was fun to drive. Went off on the last corner just to check out how the off area was. But it's good. It's going to be an exciting qualifying, I think.
You smile. It's a risk-reward kind of thing to see how far you can push, and you're like, oh, I might have pushed it a little too far there, but that's what you have to do when it's raining like this.
Yeah, I mean, I was just trying a little bit, so just a little bit too much. But, it's going to be a tight qualifying for sure.
This is where your fortunes turned last year, and your season really got started here at Road America. What this track means to you and getting out here, and hopefully it'll be dry when we go qualifying.
I love this place. It's always awesome to be here. It's a proper track, one of the best, probably top 2, top 3 on my list in everywhere in the world. The fans are awesome. I don't know. Just driving any car around here, it's super special.
Thank you for the time. We'll let you get back to it.
Thank you.
It's Alex Palou, Ryan Marine.
Let's hear from Helio Castroneves. First of all, glad we can actually speak to you this weekend. You had no voice when we saw you last in Detroit.
I know. I was having a little issues with, I think it was a little cold probably, but the voice is gone in Detroit, but now it's back. Unfortunately, these guys here are upset that my voice is back. They were really happy that I wasn't able to talk much.
Felix last week had told me it was nice and quiet in the transporter.
All of a sudden, when we have to do our appearances with the sponsors, partners, Felix was doing the most of the talking, and he liked it.
Well, we saw the car got taken back to the paddock pretty early. You were done pretty quick. You didn't want anything to do with this rain?
My friend, that's exactly. I was looking at Dave right here. Maluk was like, you next. You jump in and go next. It's a shame. I actually, last time I was here in the wet, it was with a sports car, and we ended up winning the race. Mm-hmm. And it was exactly like this. But somehow, right now, you got to do some changes on the brakes, have more temperature in the tires. I don't feel it at the moment. So for me, it's no sense. Being a team owner now, there's no sense of trying something that we don't think is going to work at the moment.
Is your perspective really different as a team owner now?
It changed. Certainly it changed in this aspect. You got to be, sometimes a little wise, especially in the conditions that we are in.
And finally, since that last rain race you mentioned at IMSA, the track's been repaved. Does the track behave a little differently in the wet since the repave?
It's still pretty much the same. I'm not sure if it's the amount of water. I'm not sure if it's the Firestone rain tires. I'm not sure what it is, but you feel that it's if you go off a little bit of the line, the amount of water, it just moves the car around, and it's a trouble. If you're qualifying in these conditions, it's going to be interesting to see.
Thanks for the time, and now that we know your voice is back, you can't avoid us.
Good. I'm back. I'm happy to be back.
All right, that's Helio Castroneves. Michael?
With Colton Herta, who just got out of the car. We're very quick out there. You like the rain, and I know that you like this track, so put the two together, and it's a pretty fun time.
I don't like the rain. I don't like feeling dirty or gross in the car, and you get a lot of water dumped on you in the car. So I prefer it when it's dry, but obviously we've got a great package here for the wet. So we're ready to fight either way for qualifying. Cambridge Honda seems fast in the wet, seems fast in the dry. I would love for it to lighten up, and maybe we do a little bit more running at the end, but it seems unlikely. So we got somebody going out, which nice for the fans and everybody here, but for us, we're not going to do much if it doesn't let up.
So we talked to several drivers. What are you trying to learn when you're out there? Just getting comfortable? You said you don't like the wet. So what's the goal when you went out?
It's still track running. There's still things that we can do. And there's so few kind of wet days that we get in INDYCAR, so any day that you do get, it's pretty crucial to kind of maximize it and get a little bit of a read to understand what we kind of want for future balances. If it does rain going into a qualifying or into a race, we understand it a little bit better. But the main reason today is it still could be wet at the start of qualifying, so it could be very crucial to understand the grip level and what we're dealing with here.
I had a question about driving shoes, and there's obviously not a lot of sole on them. Explain to the listeners what driving shoes feel like compared to regular shoes, and when they get wet, are they just useless? I mean, what happens to a driving shoe?
I mean, the driving shoes now, it's kind of move forward because of Formula One to just save weight on everything. So, you know, it's very soft. It's paper thin on the top edge, so there's really no protection or help from anything. But underneath it, the sole is just a rubber sole, but it's quite stiff.
Do you feel the pedals differently? Does it feel different?
I've only ever driven with stuff like this, so I'm not really sure what the other thing would be. But I'm sure, like in the 80s and 90s, when guys were wearing a lot bulkier shoes, maybe it does give you more feel on the brake pedal. But I don't really know.
All right. Thank you for the time. Good luck in qualifying.
Thank you.
Very quick today. That's Colton Herter, Ryan Marine.
Let's check in with Stingray Robb, who was out there probably when the rain was coming down about as hard as it was all day. What was the experience like?
It was really fun. You know, I actually really enjoy the rain, and today was like one of the few opportunities that we get in IndyCar to actually drive in the rain. You know, it's hard in those full wet conditions where the water starts to pool and puddle, and these things turn into water skis. So we were at a good enough point where there's enough cars running out on the track before it started to go red that the water couldn't pool, but it was wet enough that we could go have some fun.
We've been talking about some of the changes that IndyCar has brought to rain weather racing. We've talked with some teams about the little winglets, for lack of a better term, on the front that help to divert some of the liquid. And then we've also, you and I just a moment ago, were talking about the extra lights on the wing, and you said those really helped with visibility.
Yeah, we didn't run the turning vanes, but the end fence wing plane lights on the rear of the car, they're so much better. You know, I think that people don't realize how much spray gets sucked up off the ground in these cars just because of the downforce level that they create. But I could see, you know, at least one side of the end fence rather than just the attenuator being blocked out by the water. So it's really good to have that as an upgrade.
Describe what that's like, though, effectively driving blind except for maybe a blinking or solid light ahead of you. And that's the only thing that tells you there's a car up there.
No, that's exactly it. It's like a sheet of white paper in front of you, and you just see the blinking red light through the sheet. But you kind of got to trust the car in front of you to not go off, otherwise you're going to be following suit. But that's the fun thing about rain racing, is that it's a different element, more to worry about, but at the same time it's really fun as a driver because you can really move the car around. You're not so locked into what the tire limitations are. It's how much fun you can have.
This track in particular in the wet, what is the experience like?
It's a blast. It's a good time.
All right, thank you for the time. We'll see you in qualifying, where it may be wet, it may be dry. Do you have a preference?
No, I'm good either way. It's a good track, so I'm happy to be here.
That's Stingray Robb, guys.
Felix Rosenquist literally tiptoeing around the race course. Alexander Rossi might have gotten out there a little sooner, but was given a 5-minute hold for failing to yield to the safety car. And Scott McLaughlin turning laps, Davey, and not anywhere close to speed, and really a challenge for these cars to make it through these corners.
Yeah, that's all they're doing. And I take Colton's side. I don't like the rain either. I mean, if it's there, you got to do it, but I don't ever had that much fun in it. And so I don't know, he seems to like it and has fun in it, but I'm not one. I'm not a fan of it. I love the dry. I think I like getting the most out of a race car, and whether it is wet, dry, you have to do that. But with the rain the way it is right now, there's so many risks with the puddles going across, the streams, like you said, just things out of your hands.
I think, though, it does make sense from the standpoint, and I think Colton hit on it as we see Rosenquist going to the outside of Kiffin Simpson to turn number 3, heading toward that Sargento bridge. I think it makes sense from the standpoint because, as we speculated earlier, in terms of your qualifying strategy, it may start wet and then dry as the session proceeds. So it's probably a pretty good idea to have a baseline set up on your race car.
Yeah, a couple things that Colton said. It doesn't rain that often. We mentioned that before. You don't have a chance to run these cars in the rain that much. So when it rains, you are taking that knowledge in, even if it's not for today or tomorrow, just trying to figure out what you have. And I think that's a situation that everybody's trying to do. Just try to get some knowledge out of it, see where your braking is, seeing how the tires feel, what kind of grip that you actually have. So it's like I say, everybody out there, you're always on that edge of not trying not to overdrive the car. It's actually not how fast you can go. It's almost how you don't make mistakes. It's not about the speed. It's just about not making mistakes.
As Graham said, got to have a car to qualify.
Yeah, that's right.
Interesting to note, too, that in terms of the process involving when and how they use these tires, that every team, you heard Firestone say, they have 2 sets that they keep with them, and they have to use those 2 sets until they can get 2 more from Firestone.
And what that does, honestly, it does keep those tires fresh. They may be in those trucks for 6 months, right? And they're carrying them around. They use them sometimes for tow tires. They just happen to have their on wheels are ready to go. But it does, you want to keep as fresh tires as you can, I think, rather train or the standard tire. And so that does give these drivers an opportunity to use these tires up, feel what they're like, but then get some new ones for to carry around.
Maybe some of these teams and some of these drivers feel like that there is an outside chance that, again, qualifying could start out wet if this stingy front lingers a little bit. And to that end now, over the last 8 minutes of this session, Davey, business starts to pick up a little bit. Will Power's out. Rossi's still out. Portier, McLaughlin, Armstrong, Award, Kyoto, Rosenquist, Kirkwood, Rasmussen, Dixon all turning
Yeah,
left.
and I see right now that it's really wet. Michael could help us out as well on this, but it doesn't seem like the raindrops are coming down as hard as they were.
Michael Young.
Yeah, I describe it as spitting rain. Is about all that it is right now. As you look on the puddles that have formed here on pit lane, you don't really see any raindrops actually hitting, just those light little spits of rain. So it certainly has stopped what we would experience most of this entire session, that downpour, and it's really very, very light rain, if at all any rain. So the front has moved through, and we have talked to several drivers. Marcus Ericsson's done for the session. They've already taken the car back to the paddock, so he's completed his practice session here, but still people trying to learn as this track slowly begins the dry out process.
Yeah, and the skies start to lighten a little bit as we look off in the distance, Davey, so conditions are ever improving, and those with a pretty good baseline on the situation would be Herta, Power, Lundgaard, McLaughlin, and Ericsson. Those are the 5 fastest.
But we see Ericsson hit coming back in turn 13, went off course, came back on, hit like the rumble strip, looking like a ski jumper, flying that car all 4 tires off the ground. As we see Rosenquist back to what we were just talking about, doesn't look, I think he did hit something.
That's
maybe underneath the car. Oh, I'm sorry, the car, yeah, it is Kirkwood, and there's that risk to reward. It does look like he definitely hit that outside barrier off of 14, and that's part of it. You don't want to correct before qualifying, and we just had one happen.
Yeah, 6.5 minutes to go as we see Kyle Kirkwood has come to a stop just to driver's right at the entrance to the pits and moving around to the cockpit.
Yeah, I don't think maybe he actually hit the wall. He just hit a sign.
Some of that Firestone signage that is in the grass that set you up for the entrance to the pits, and but the car is stopped. Kyle's moving around to the cockpit. Yeah, we can see 3 of the corners: right front, left rear, and those all look pretty good.
And there's
Now
a
we
right
look at the
rear.
other
Yeah,
one.
looks good. I don't think he definitely did not get into the wall. It's the Firestone banners you said that they have just set up on the bottom. He comes off, gasses it too much, hits 1, hits 2, knocks it over. Does have a slight bit of contact with the very nose of the race car. No suspension hit, and I don't think hard enough to even hurt that nose piece.
Yeah, and again, that's right near one of the staging areas where the AMR INDYCAR safety team is positioned, and they've got the strap on that thing pretty quick, and they're gonna get him back out on course and get him back underway with just about 6.5 minutes remaining in the session. Ryan Marine.
Well, we thought Colton Herta might be done, but apparently they've thought better of that, because he's just put his helmet back on and he's climbing inside the number 26 Gamebridge Honda once again. The crew helping him do that, trying to keep those shoes dry, as we heard Michael talking with him about, and they do think there's still something to be learned here as the track starts to dry out here at the end of this session. So Colton Herta getting buckled in, and we'll try to get out for a couple more exploratory laps before the checkered flag falls.
I remember a story once upon a time about this situation involving those drivers' shoes, and it was a Formula One driver, Davey, who was in a test session for the first time of the year, and he went out, turned a lap, pulled back in, and apparently he had bought new driver's shoes, and the pedals that were on the car the year before, the tread on the pedals matched the tread on his old shoes, and so he had to go back and put the old shoes on.
Back on, yeah. So just what the shoes from the time I started till today, the difference of them, they did not have race shoes per se. You used wrestling.
You wore loafers in those days.
Yeah, loafers or wrestling shoes. You had wrestling shoes, actually, But you even go back and watch the guys with cowboy boots on. You've seen a lot of different things through the years coming up. But we'd always go down and get a wrestling shoe. They were really thin.
That makes sense.
And then Bill Simpson, was Simpson Race Products, I think it was the first one that I know of that came up with a racing shoe that was fireproof. It was thin. The soles were very thin, light shoe. Then as it progressed, the shoes started getting a little bit heavier in weight that Colton talked about. The soles were a little bit more where you could actually walk around in them a little bit, a little more comfortable. But now they've gone back to as light as you can possibly get with a really flat sole so you can feel those pedals. But the sole's flat, but it is hard.
Well, and I learned the hard way because they offered us, Simpson offered us all, when I was a pit reporter, offered us all shoes that matched our fire suits. And I wore them one race and realized that they're not made to walk up and down pit road.
They're
for
driving shoes only.
Yeah, for sure. Made for driving. So they made, a nice display in my home in terms of my racing memorabilia. Michael Young.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just making a note as we hear Kyle Kirkwood's car come to a rest. Engine shuts off as we wind down this practice session, still under red here at Road America. But it has become chilly, and I don't know if it's the fact that I'm soaking wet and my shoes are sopping wet or the fact that this wind has picked up. They said when this front did move through that would bring colder weather with it, or I should say colder temperatures. So as that wind starts to pick back up, it's starting to feel a little chilly out here. So that, I think by the time we get to qualifying, will be night and day difference. The weather between yesterday and today as we're back to green, and that's Pato O'Ward heading out on track.
Yeah, we see a whole gaggle of cars exiting pit road now, making their way to turn number 1, Davey.
Yeah, we noticed Scott Dick that had an onboard camera with him, and he had his shield up with this aero screen. You really don't need your shield, and I think maybe he had a fog issue or something going on, so his shield was up. You're still protected from debris and the elements, as we see. That's just weird that Palou, he pulled out.
Might be letting traffic clear.
Well, it just pulling out of the pit, so I can't imagine him just stopping like that to let traffic clear. I think something is wrong with that car. I think it shut down, and maybe it has something to do with him going off in that gravel pit, that something, got disconnected. And he's definitely not moving still, so that car just came to a stop right outside of coming on the pit. So coming out of the pit.
Yeah, he would have pulled in driver's right, I think, and slowed down, but not come to a complete stop, as you suggest. I thought maybe he'd get rolling again, but no, it looks like an issue with the car of Alex Palou, and it's right at the entrance to the pits. There's about 10 or 12 cars that work their way around him and are now trying to get laps in as we approach the final 5 minutes of the session.
With a red flag.
Yeah, and so that's a red flag, and that will, because of the hold involved in red, effectively end the session for Alex Palou, but hopefully that's a situation that team can rectify quickly, as again, AMR INDYCAR safety crew is there quickly, and be interesting to see if they can use the onboard starter to get him refired. And they're going to go check with Alex Palou and see what the issue is, and we'll see if we can get a word maybe with Barry Watson, a member of that crew, to find out exactly what the problem was for Alex Palou, as the AMR INDYCAR safety officials are talking things over. And Pietro Fittipaldi, he's turned several laps in this session, Ryan Marine, and let's see what Pietro Fittipaldi's thoughts are on this day.
First trip to Road America, and you're getting a little bit of everything. You had dry yesterday, the wet today. What did you think of the wet conditions?
Yeah, it was pretty slippery out there. I mean, the problem was it started raining, and the rain was getting worse as the session went on. It was my first time really driving this car in the wet. So I was just trying to learn it, see where the limits are. But then every lap you do, the track conditions change because it was getting wetter. So it was hard to really understand what the tires are doing. But yeah, I think it was good just to get a few laps. I mean, like 5 laps on the wets in case it is wet for qualifying or at some other point in the year. It's important to at least have a few more laps with the wet condition.
We saw you have your little moment sliding off. I think it was in Canada Corner. Can you take us through? Was that just part of the exploratory process?
Yeah, it was. It's definitely just trying to explore the limits. But for sure, when we went out there, the lap before, I was like, I can brake a little bit later. I went the next lap, I braked a little bit later, and it was just wetter than what it was the previous lap. And I just locked up, and when you lock up, I mean, the car doesn't decelerate. So just ended up, going straight, got in the gravel, and but the safety crew did a good job just putting me back on the pit lane. And then we decided to call it just because it was getting too wet.
What was visibility like?
Yeah, it was hard. Very difficult to see anything behind cars. Honestly, it's a little worrying. If you're in a race and there's cars ahead of you and it's this wet, you basically cannot see anything.
That's Pietro Fittipaldi, whose grandfather Emerson won here 3 times. His second cousin, Christian Fittipaldi, got his first career IndyCar win here in 1999 as well. So a lot of family legacy for the Fittipaldis at Road America, Michael.
Yes, and thank you, Ryan. And everybody kind of hunkered down here in the Alex Palou camp, but did get word that it was an electrical issue, so something shorted out on the car. Obviously, it sat here in the rain as they tried to get back out and turn a couple of laps in the remaining minutes of the session. They had to shorten the car, and that's why it came to a rest at the exit of pit lane.
Yeah, he is in the AMR IndyCar safety vehicle, and Alex Palou now going to jump in the medical car to get a ride back while they put that car behind the wall, Davey, and looks like they might get back to green flag conditions and give everybody a chance for maybe one more lap with about 2 minutes to go.
Yeah, 2 minutes left. They still have the car on the hook. Got to get it turned around, get the car. I would think that maybe not. With exactly 2 minutes left, they're still strapping that car down. I just don't think there'll be many takers for one lap. So I think this could be the end of it. Right now, actually, we see McLaughlin out of his car, Mark. We see the AMR safety. They do such a good job. Another thing that's very key, when these cars go on the tow hooks, you have to make sure they're strapped down right, because we've seen times where they don't know how to strap down right, and it does more damage to the car on the tow truck getting them in. And with this guy being P1 yesterday, you want to make sure they don't mess that car up. They is moving now. Looks like most everybody's got out of their car. Looks like Dixon may still be in his car. We'll see what happens. But right now, the truck's moving. Should do a U-turn down there in turn 1, get that thing back into pit lane, and then with a minute 12, I just don't. Yeah, I think the checker's going to come out before they get the track clear.
Yeah, there's a wide runoff area down there where they spin that car around, and that's exactly what they're doing, and headed back to the paddock as we speak with that thing on the hook. And got to be careful. I mean, it's pretty stable, but you do got to be careful with that car on the hook like that.
Yeah, you sure do. You don't want that thing to do. You don't do any damage. There's nothing wrong with the car other than something electrical. Something made the car shut off, but there's no. Wow, that's weird. They're not even going to the pit side.
Yeah, they're just getting it out of harm's way and hopefully give everybody one more lap.
Yeah, 39 seconds left, and I guess they're going to go green with 39 seconds left. Don't know if there'll be any takers, and there is a few. And one of the Uncos cars I see pulling out, going to be a taker, and the checkered flag's going to be out, so they're not even getting a full lap unless they extend this session. They'll go out, they'll come around, checker flag will fly right before between turn 13 and 14, and they'll just pull right straight in the pit. Dixon said, that's not worth going out. He's out of his car, and so yeah, that was. I don't know if that was a good move or
26 cars turned laps. Some of them just 2 or 3 laps, and the only one that didn't turn a lap was Nolan Siegel, who's down to 78.
Yeah, and like I say, probably risk to reward there just probably wasn't good. Right now he's out right now. He's going to go out and come right back in, so he'll have a little bit of experience in the rain in that 78 car.
Let's go to Ryan Marine.
Linus Lundqvist out of the American Legion Honda. How much, if any, rain running had you done in an IndyCar before today?
I think I did like 4 laps in Nashville last year, so that was my experience of it. So honestly, I didn't get much more. I don't think we even did like a full push lap at a single moment because all the red flags. But either way, it's good to get a feel for it, how quickly the tires come up, or should I say not come up in these conditions. So yeah, it was good, and let's see what qualifying brings.
All right, we'll let you get to it.
Thank you.
Michael?
That was Scott McLaughlin. That's got to make you feel pretty good. A young fan came up with the McLaughlin Avenue sign for you to autograph.
Yeah.
I don't know. That seems to be very cool. A young kid be able to do that, and you give the time.
It's very surreal. You take for granted like how cool it is. At the end of the day, you're like a role model for a lot of young people coming up, boys and girls that are aspiring to be race car drivers. It's nice to give back a little bit for sure. And then we always have a lot of fans here. A lot of families come out, which is great. So Road Americas, it's definitely one of my favorite events.
Do you remember being that age and getting autographs? Who was your big hunt to get an autograph from as a kid?
Well, Scott Dixon was too far away from New Zealand, so I couldn't get him. But there's a guy named Greg Murphy, who's a touring car driver in Australia. He was my absolute idol, and I'm lucky now. I call both of my heroes my friends, which is really cool, and I treasure that. But that was fun out there, man. Like the rain was good. It's nice to have a feel of it in the open wheeler, and I haven't driven much rain in the open wheeler, so that was fun.
So what did you learn? Because I saw you were in and out of that car 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
So what was the situation, and what did you learn in this session?
I had to go toilet, so I had to go bathroom. You can't help that. So, ultimately, it's the car was just good. We were just coming in, trying a few different things, see what I like in the rain, and hopefully one day it might not transition to anything in qualifying. It's probably going to dry out, but ultimately if it rains one day in the race or something like that, I'm a little bit more prepared.
So when you flush and down under, it goes the opposite way here. Does the rain go the opposite way on the track here?
I don't know that I can see. We go too fast in the IndyCar. Yeah.
Very good. Best of luck at qualifying. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, boss.
That's Scott McLaughlin.
So that'll do it. Herta, the quickest, we should say, Power, Rasmussen, Lundgaard, McLaughlin, Ericsson, Rahal, Rossi, Pourchaire, and VK through 10th. Then Rob Fittipaldi, Grosjean, Simpson, and Palou. Armstrong 16th, 17th O'Ward, 18th Lundqvist. Giotto 19th, Rosenquist 20th, 21st Ferrucci, 22nd Kirkwood, 23rd Newgarden, 24th Castro Neves, 25th Scott Dixon, 26th Jack Harvey. Nolan Single turned some laps toward the end. Here's how the rest of this day will go. At 1:30 local time, 2:30 Eastern, we'll have Indy Next qualifying, and then have the IndyCar qualifying of the Firestone Fast 6 at 2:25 local time. That's 3:25 Eastern. An amazing job, Michael Young, Ryan Marine, all throughout both of the sessions today with all of the insight, staying on top of the stories from pit road. Thank them for their efforts for sure. Look forward to their contributions this afternoon. For Davey Hamilton, this is Mark James. So long for now from the Expel Grand Prix at Road America.